When I was 20, my brother looked me in the eye and told me, "You're not damaged, Jade. You're just addicted to being the victim." He said it soft, like it was a kindness, but it hit me harder than anything our father ever yelled. It was the moment I knew my own family didn't see me as a person anymore, just a liability in a long, polished legacy they'd spent decades curating. I'm Jade Ellison. I grew up in Charleston, South Carolina, in a house with a white picket fence, monogrammed napkins, and silence so loud it could crack your ribs. My dad was a decorated Navy officer turned state senator. My mom ran every church fundraiser like it was a military operation. My older brother Bryce? Golden boy. Straight A's, Yale law, youth pastor energy with a splash of TED Talk charisma. And then there was me. I liked stories. I liked filming people talking about things no one else wanted to hear, like how the mayor's anti-homeless policy was forcing families into tents behind the train station. I'd film, edit, post it on a locked Vimeo with a watermark, JE Archive. No one at home ever asked what I was working on. My mom would glance at my laptop, then change the subject. Bryce once told me, "You've got all this energy and you waste it on trauma bait." At the time, I thought maybe he was right. Maybe I was too much, too intense, too drawn to pain. But what else do you expect from someone raised on Sunday school and gaslighting? The breaking point came during Bryce's DC send-off. Our family threw a whole event, rented a hall, ordered custom cookies with little gavels on them. I wore a navy jumpsuit I found on sale, filmed the whole thing out of habit. Toward the end, I slipped him a small flash drive. It had a short doc I made about a low-income housing complex being torn down to build a golf resort with his donor's name on it. He didn't even take it. Later that night, when the guests were gone and Mom was scrubbing wine rings off the counter, Bryce came up behind me in the kitchen. He didn't yell. He just said it, like he was correcting my posture. "Stop trying to make pain your brand. You're embarrassing the family." I stood there, fingers still wrapped around a coffee mug, and I swear I didn't breathe for a whole minute. That night, I couldn't sleep. I walked around the house like a ghost, touching the walls like they might dissolve if I blinked too long. 1 week later, I came home from a shoot to find my room empty. Completely. The furniture, the books, my editing rig, gone. All that was left was a Bible on the floor and a note in my dad's handwriting. Time apart is sometimes the best path forward. For you. For all of us. My bank card didn't work the next morning. When I called Mom, she answered but didn't say anything. I heard her breathing, maybe crying, and then the line went dead. I didn't fight. I didn't scream. I didn't go on Facebook and write some grand post about being disowned. I just packed what was left. 2 suitcases, my camera, and a 3-year-old laptop, and bought a one-way Greyhound ticket to Nashville. I picked it because it was far enough. Because I had a friend who once said, "You could probably crash here for a few days if you ever needed." Turns out, a few days really means 3. After that, I found myself sleeping on a stranger's couch from couch surfing. I got a barista job, cleaned Airbnbs on the side, filmed weddings and birthday parties for people who wanted fake movie trailer-style highlight reels. No one knew my last name. I didn't offer it. At night, I'd sit in the dark with my headphones in and listen to the sound of people talking. Strangers, old interviews, voice notes from the women I used to film back home. Their stories echoed louder than anything I'd ever said, and somewhere in that noise I realized they didn't kick me out because I was broken. They erased me because I refused to play along. I wasn't their embarrassment. I was their mirror, and they didn't like what they saw. I changed my name on job apps to Junie Evans, cut my hair short. I stopped filming for other people and started filming what I saw. Quietly, from the back of church basements, school board meetings, protest vigils that never made the news. That's when I met a woman named Ayla. But I'll get to that. Because the real story, the one they'll never be able to edit out of the family scrapbook, didn't start when they kicked me out. It started the moment I stopped trying to come back. Nashville wasn't what I imagined. It was colder, grayer, lonelier. I thought moving would feel like freedom. It didn't. It felt like falling through a silence so thick you couldn't even hear yourself scream. My third night there, the woman whose couch I'd been sleeping on, Kristen, a part-time dog groomer who called everything vibes, told me her boyfriend was moving in early. "Nothing personal," she said, shrugging while folding her throw blankets like I hadn't just cried myself to sleep on them for the last 2 nights. "You're cool, but yeah." I left with both my suitcases and nowhere to go. That night, I slept in the corner of a 24-hour laundromat on Dickerson Pike. I propped my camera bag behind my neck and wrapped my hoodie around my feet. The hum of dryers became the lullaby I didn't ask for. The next morning, I bought a gas station coffee and walked 6 miles to a day labor center. I lied and said I had a cousin nearby, said I'd be fine. They didn't ask questions. I took jobs where I could. Dishwashing, overnight merch resets at dollar stores, holding signs on street corners. I stopped filming. The camera sat in my bag like a dead limb, too heavy to carry but too familiar to throw away. Weeks blurred. Survival made you forget what ambition even felt like. I was just trying to not disappear. Then, one Thursday afternoon, I wandered into this old brick building on Jefferson Street looking for somewhere warm. It had a hand-painted sign outside that said, "Shelter for our sisters." Inside smelled like soup and bleach. I was about to leave when I heard a woman yelling. It wasn't anger. It was panic. I stepped around the corner and saw a security guard towering over a woman in a hijab who was holding a little girl's hand so tight the child's fingers had turned white. The guard kept pointing at some paper in his hand. "She signed out yesterday." He barked at the receptionist. "She can't just come back in." The receptionist looked helpless. The woman looked frozen, and the child was crying soundlessly. I don't know what came over me. I walked straight toward them and said, "She's here for the food pantry appointment. That's still today, right?" Then I turned to the receptionist, locked eyes, and said, "Right?" The receptionist blinked, nodded slowly. The guard looked between us, frustrated but unsure. I added, "And maybe don't scream at someone who clearly doesn't speak English. That cool?" He backed off, muttered something about people lying, then left. I waited until he was gone before turning to the woman. "You okay?" She didn't answer, just held her daughter tighter. 10 minutes later, I was outside, unsure if I'd done anything right, until the receptionist came out with a clipboard and a soft smile. "You with a group?" "No." "Well, you just acted like you were. You got a second?" That's how I met Rochelle, who ran a local grassroots aid group that did what the big nonprofits often forgot to: actually listen. She asked me what I did. I told her I used to film things. Quietly, she said, "You want to do it again?" That weekend, I shot a community vigil for 2 teens who died in a detention facility. No pay, just a bowl of chili and a ride home. But when Rochelle saw the cut I sent her, no music, no narration, just silence and faces and truth, she said, "We need more of this. You in?" I was in. Only this time I didn't use my name. I signed the footage Evans. No first name, no backstory. Just a ghost with a lens. It felt better that way. Cleaner. I lived in a sublet that winter, shared with 4 strangers and a mouse we named Larry. I filmed at shelters, clinics, protests, and churches, places full of grief and grit and hope so raw it could snap your heart open if you stared too long. And then came the clip. Ayla, a mother of 3, from Eritrea, had lived in the US 8 years, clean record, 2 jobs, kids in school. ICE showed up at her work because of a typo in her paperwork, took her in front of her coworkers. I was outside the detention center when her eldest son, 10 years old, too skinny, hoodie too big, tried to explain what happened to a reporter who kept cutting him off, so I filmed him instead. I uploaded the clip to a private link on Vimeo, like I always did. Rochelle shared it. It got picked up. Thousands of views, then local news, then national. No one knew who filmed it. No one asked. That's how I liked it. But a week later, Rochelle sat me down. CNN called, she said. They want to interview the videographer. You. I shook my head. Nope. They'll blur your face, hide your name. No. She nodded. Slow. Okay. Why not? I told her the truth. Because the last time my face was on a screen, my brother told me it made us all look weak. She didn't push, just said, Well, Evans, whoever you are, your work just got a woman released on bail. And her son wanted me to tell you thank you. I walked home that night with frozen hands and a heartbeat I hadn't felt in years. Not pride, not even relief. Just something that felt rooted. Like maybe I wasn't floating anymore. The next day, I went into a thrift shop and bought a little brass plaque. It cost me $2. It said, Do the work. Let others decide what to call it. I hung it above my desk. And then I picked up my camera. Again. There's something about working behind the camera that makes you feel less human, but in a weirdly comforting way. You become a witness, a lens. You're not part of the mess, you're just documenting it. And for a long time, that was exactly what I needed. I stayed small on purpose, didn't attach my name to anything, didn't speak at events. I filmed from the back, edited from a borrowed laptop in a room that smelled like burned toast and mildew, and uploaded quietly. I'd use initials, pseudonyms, sometimes just anonymous. It wasn't humility. It was protection. Protection from being dragged back into a version of myself I had to kill to survive. By that spring, Rochelle started calling me our ghost. I helped her group get small grants, made fundraising videos, created profiles of immigrant families and survivors who'd slipped through the cracks. We didn't have a budget, but people trusted us. Trusted me. Still, I didn't trust myself with anything that looked like permanence. I didn't go by Jade. I went by Junie. Or sometimes just E. I told myself names didn't matter if the work spoke loud enough. That's what I believed until the night the school bus thing happened. It was supposed to be a routine shoot. A community meeting about budget cuts to a local ESL program. I showed up early, like always, set up a tripod in the back of a gym that smelled like lemon cleaner and old sneakers. Halfway through, a woman stormed in crying. 2 ICE officers had followed a school bus home from a nearby elementary and detained a father in front of his 6-year-old daughter. She was still sitting on the curb when they cuffed him. I remember hearing the air leave the room. No one said anything at first. Then someone asked if anyone got footage. I hadn't. But I went back to that street the next day with my camera and a notebook. I found the daughter's aunt, a shy woman who spoke just enough English to tell me her niece still cried every time she heard a diesel engine. I didn't film her. I didn't need to. I filmed the street. The empty spot where the dad's truck had been. The sidewalk chalk still there from 2 days before. Flowers, a hopscotch grid, and the word Papa in shaky kid handwriting. I put it all together in one long still cut. No music, no narration. Just that quiet broken block and the distant sound of a bus engine rolling by. I uploaded it to a private Vimeo link and sent it to Rochelle. She cried watching it. This isn't a video, she said. It's a damn prayer. That was the first time she asked me to speak publicly. Not about myself, just about what we'd seen. I said no. I always said no. But later that night, I sat on my floor and looked at that chalk word again, Papa, frozen in a paused frame. And I thought about my dad. Not the man who signed the check for Bryce's law school or the man who had me erased like I was a mistake on his resume, but the one who used to wake me up for pancakes on Saturdays. The one who taught me how to hold a camera steady. The one who said, "The truth's ugly sometimes, but that don't mean it's not worth filming." And then I thought about the last time he said my name out loud. I don't know why that broke me, but it did. So, the next week, when the city council held an open session on ICE detainments near schools, I signed up to speak. I didn't plan to. I just stood up. I walked to the mic with my hands shaking so bad I had to grip the podium. I didn't give them my real name. I just said, I'm someone who's been watching and filming and trying not to be seen. Then I told them what I'd seen. The fear, the silence, the way whole families were vanishing without a headline. I didn't cry. I didn't preach. But when I was done, no one clapped. They just nodded. That night, I got a call from a journalist from a local indie outlet. She wanted to run a piece called The Eye in the Silence, about anonymous field documentarians. She didn't ask my name, just said, "Whatever you're comfortable sharing." I thought about it. Really thought. And for the first time, I didn't feel scared. I felt ready. So I gave her a new name. Not Jade, not June, just J.E. And when she asked what it stood for, I said, "It's not the initials that matter. It's what they do." That interview went small viral. A few policy folks in D.C. reposted it. A national nonprofit reached out. They offered me a fellowship. Real money, real resources. They said, "We want to amplify your voice." I said, "Only if I get to choose when I'm seen." They agreed. So I moved into a better place. Still modest, but mine. I started doing workshops, teaching undocumented teens how to film their own communities. I built a tiny team, taught them to edit like we were bleeding truth into pixels. And still, no one knew my last name. No one needed to. Because for the first time in my life, I wasn't trying to be remembered. I was trying to make something that would outlive the forgetting. And somewhere in that quiet climb, I forgot to feel ashamed. But the past has teeth. And just when I thought I had finally stepped out of the shadow, it found me again. I knew the moment I saw the email subject line. Your brother Bryce, urgent press inquiry that whatever piece I had built was about to be tested. It came from a journalist I knew from a justice advocacy roundtable, someone respectful, not the kind that hunted for clickbait. She didn't even include the article in the body. Just a question. "Can we talk?" "Something's come up. Involves your family. Your name's not in it. Yet." I didn't respond right away. I just sat there, in the same thrifted chair where I'd cut my hair short 3 years earlier and stared at the screen. Then I did what I swore I wouldn't do. I Googled my brother. His photo was everywhere. Polished suit, Yale smile, tie knotted with precision. Headline after headline read, "State Attorney Candidate Bryce Ellison under investigation for campaign misconduct." Leaked memos suggest evidence suppression in Sanctuary City case. Whistleblower reveals confidential footage tied to internal collusion. I felt the air shift around me. Not triumph, not anger, something colder. Buried deep in one of the threads was a line that made my chest seize. An anonymous leak appears to be footage shot by a source using the initials J.E. I didn't speak for a long time. I just stood up, walked to the window, and looked out at the quiet block I now called home. There were no cameras, no protest signs, no shadows from a church cross like the one outside my parents' old house. I'd built this life, inch by inch. And now Bryce's wreckage was rolling straight toward it like a slow avalanche. The next day, I got the voicemail I'd been bracing for my whole adult life. It wasn't my mother. It wasn't a lawyer. It was Bryce. He sounded tired. Tight. Still speaking like every word had been cleared by an imaginary PR team. "Hey, Jade." Or Junie, I guess. "Look, I know we haven't spoken, but this is getting out of hand. They're pulling family names now. They might drag you into it. I know we've had issues, but maybe it's time we talk. I'd like to do this privately. No cameras, just us. Just us. As if the last 10 years hadn't happened. As if he hadn't handed my shame to our parents like an arrest record. I didn't call him back. But 2 days later, I was in D.C. I didn't announce it. I didn't post a photo. I went because I needed to see what it looked like. His downfall in person. I sat in the back row of a public ethics hearing, camera tucked in my coat, no one recognizing me. Bryce sat in the center, flanked by 2 lawyers, his jaw set like stone. He looked smaller than I remembered. Not in stature, in presence. He didn't see me, but I watched him fumble through deflections, offer half confessions wrapped in technical jargon. The Bryce I knew would have nailed the landing with a smile. This Bryce looked cornered. Then a question came from one of the panel members, a woman I knew from a conference last year. Do you deny that the footage was obtained and manipulated to discredit the sanctuary status of the district? Bryce's mouth twitched. I can't confirm the origin of the footage. It's from a source I no longer have contact with. Liar. It wasn't just footage. It was mine. Cut. Cropped. Misused to fit a policy that deported 4 families last year. My footage. Used by the same man who once called my work emotional noise. I left before the session ended. I didn't speak to the press. I didn't leak a statement. I just sent Bryce one message. You erased me to protect your name. I rebuilt mine without needing yours. Don't ever use my work again. No response. But that week, someone else called. My mother. Her number popped up at 11:42 p.m. I let it ring 4 times before answering. She sounded older, fragile in a way that didn't feel performative. Your father wants to talk. He had years, I said. So did I, she whispered. We just didn't know how to hold you. And when we let go, we thought we were keeping ourselves from drowning. I didn't answer. Jade, she said, her voice cracking. Please, just come home. Just once. Home. That word hit different now. But against my better judgment, I went. Not to reconcile, not to forgive, just to see. With my own eyes. One last time. Their house was smaller than I remembered. Or maybe I'd just grown. My father didn't speak right away. My mother hovered like she was afraid I'd vanish if the wind blew too hard. And Bryce? He wasn't there. When I asked, she said, he's not welcome right now. He made his mess. But I knew better. What they really meant was, he lost the only thing they valued. Power. And me? I had it now. In a quieter, more dangerous form. Visibility. Integrity. Something they couldn't script. That night, over the same kitchen table they once left my college acceptance letter unopened on, my father finally said it. I don't know how you turned out like this, but I can see now. You didn't need us to do it. I looked him dead in the eye. Number, I needed you to leave so I could. I didn't stay the night. I took a cab back to my hotel. The next morning, the headlines were already changing. But the story wasn't over. Because the moment I left that house, I knew exactly what I needed to do next. The moment I stepped out of my parents' house, I knew what needed to happen next. Not out of anger. Not even out of revenge. It was clarity. The kind that shows up once you've looked everyone in the eye and felt absolutely nothing left to prove. I flew back to Nashville the next morning and went straight to my desk. I didn't unpack. Didn't sleep. I opened the folder I'd been avoiding for over a year, labeled Collateral. Inside were raw clips, metadata, unedited footage with timestamps. Everything Bryce had scrubbed or distorted to push his sanctuary smear campaign. I'd kept it all. Back then, I told myself it was for legal safety, maybe. But if I'm honest, I think some part of me always knew this day would come. I didn't send it to the press. I sent it to the one person who I knew wouldn't blink. Mira Song, the ethics investigator leading the hearing. She and I had never met personally, but I remembered her from a video I once edited about whistleblower protections. Her eyes didn't flinch. The email subject was simple. For the record, from the original source, attached, a folder named JE/unaltered.period. Within 48 hours, the footage was verified, authenticated, and entered into public record. Bryce was officially implicated in falsifying context for political gain, using footage he had no legal right to. It didn't stop there. Turns out this wasn't his first time bending facts. Or stealing them. Former interns came forward. So did a city employee. Quietly but clearly, a pattern emerged. 2 weeks later, Bryce was disbarred. 3 weeks after that, he withdrew from his campaign. And the month after? he issued a public apology on his personal site. But here's the kicker. He never mentioned me, not by name, not by relation, just a vague, sterile line. I regret the unauthorized use of journalistic material. I read it once, then closed the tab. It didn't sting, not like it used to, because by then I was already working with a new task force, pushing for legislation that would make it illegal to use uncredited footage in political campaigns without explicit consent. They called it the J.E. Bill. I didn't ask for that name, but I didn't decline it either. The final draft included language I fought hard for: protections for anonymous documentarians, survivors, and whistleblowers who often risk everything just to tell the truth. When it passed through the state committee, Rochelle sent me a photo of the signed copy. No confetti. No press release. Just a sticky note she'd written across the top. We don't have to scream to be heard anymore. That night, I took a long walk through Shelby Park. The sky was low, pink, and smeared like someone had dragged a finger through it. I thought about that little girl who lost her dad to a bus route. About the boy who whispered, "Thank you," after his mom got asylum. About myself, sleeping in a laundromat with a camera and no last name. And I thought, maybe this is what justice looks like. Not dramatic, not loud, just steady. When I got home, I found a small package on my doorstep. No return address. Inside was a photo, one I hadn't seen in years. It was me and Bryce, aged 6 and 9, sitting on the steps of our childhood porch. I had missing front teeth. He was holding a plastic trophy from Little League. On the back, in faint pencil, someone had written, "She always had the stronger swing." No note, just that. I burned it in the sink, not out of spite, out of release. I don't know if it was my mother or my father who sent it. Maybe it was Bryce. Doesn't matter. What matters is, I didn't need it anymore. People always ask if I feel like I got revenge, but it was never about that. It was about building something that couldn't be erased. Not by silence, not by shame, not even by blood. What I've learned is this: sometimes the only closure you get is knowing you survived without the apology. And that's more than enough. If you've ever had to walk away from people who were supposed to protect you, just to become yourself, I see you. You're not alone in that. Drop a comment if this hit close. I read everyone, even the quiet ones. And if you want to keep walking through stories like mine, hit subscribe. You don't have to be loud to be powerful. Sometimes just telling the truth is enough.